the Gemara, the Talmud, and the verses which are cited regarding Chesed, doing acts of loving kindness and studying Torah, it doesn't say grammatically, it doesn't say Misha Osak b'Torah Gemilas Chasodim, one who engaged in Torah and Chesed, he will find life. But rather, the Talmud says, Kola Osek b'Torah, v'Osa Chesed, one who is engaged in Torah, not the past, the present, one who is engaged in Torah study and engages and does Chesed, he will find life. It's not something of the past, because I did something in the when I was younger. I was fully immersed in Torah study. I did acts of loving kindness in my youth. Haven't done it in a while. That person is not connected to life. It's in the present. Ha'osek b'Torah. If you're engaged in Torah study and you're engaging in Chesed, it's on a continuous basis. And then it quotes a verse. It says, "Rodef tzedakah v'chesed yimtzu chayim." The pasuk says, "The one who pursues in the pursuing Chesed ve'emes, Chesed, acts of loving kindness and truth, which is the Torah, yimtzu chayim." It's an ongoing level of involvement. It's ongoing. The Chofetz Chaim cites a Zohar, and this Nor Chaim elsewhere cites a similar Zohar, that every one of us, we have our days of our life designated in advance. How many days, how many hours, how many minutes we're going to live, how many seconds we're going to live. What does God give a person a specific amount, allocation of time to live? What's the value of life? Each of us have a mission, have an objective. If we don't have enough time to accomplish that, so if that's the case, the objective has no relevance. The mission cannot be met. The objective cannot be addressed. God says, I give you enough time. You're supposed to accomplish this literally to the minute, to the second. You have enough time in your life. It includes the relaxing, sleeping, attending to all your physical necessities, amenities of life. You have enough time to address your objective. That's how the time is allocated to each one of us in terms of our lives. Some people live longer, some people live less. Doesn't mean to say that a person couldn't have lived longer. But if you utilize your life properly and appropriately, God will allow you to use those days to address whatever that objective is. Okay? So every day is allocated. It should be used. It should be invested as God wants you to invest it. What happens if a person's ready to be check out, and he checks out? God caused the person to pass away. Now this day of judgment. You come before the heavenly court, before the heavenly throne, and they present the person's life. What do they present? All the days of your life. Every day of the year. You live 70 years, 80 years, every day of that life that you lived. That day, there's a dossier on the day. What did you do on that day? Every day comes and presents itself. He studied so much Torah. He wore tefillin. He said Kriya Shema. He believed in God. He performed a Kiddush Hashem. He was a role model, what a Jew should be. All this, that presents itself. Every single day of your life. What happens if you have days where there was a void, there was a vacuum, there was no Torah study? That day, God forbid, you missed tefillin. You miss saying Shema. That day presents itself. So every day when it presents itself, it has to present itself. Rodev tzedakah v'chesed, tzedakah v'emes, yimtzu chayim. If you want to find life, the true life, eternal life, you have to be engaged continuously. Why? Because every day has its purpose, has its value. And if it's something in the past has nothing to do with the present. So there always has to be an ongoing involvement to be able to generate, to utilize the day as it was meant initially given to you, to maximize on its value. Years ago, there was a rabbi, he lectured at the Gateway seminars, and the person gets off the plane before he gets on, catches the connecting flight, says, I got a half an hour I could kill. Killing time, I have some time to kill. Today, I don't know if they use that terminology anymore, but at one time they said, to kill time. Literally, that's killing time. Time is life. That's what time is. Once the time runs out, there's no longer life. So if you take the time, which is life, and you waste it, you're really killing time. You're cutting off a piece of your life which has infinite value, which could be invested to create phenomenal things for you. And you let it go, you let it slip through the cracks. You can't recoup that time. Even if a person, the Chofetz Chaim points out somewhere, even if you tshuva, person does tshuva, he didn't put on tefillin. But factually speaking, you didn't wear tefillin on that day. You didn't say Kriya Shema on that day. You do tshuva, you ate non-kosher. So that's removing your record. But let's say you were supposed to eat matzah to Seder, and you didn't eat matzah to Seder. And you do tshuva for not eating matzah. You're not accredited for eating matzah. It may not be a claim against you for not eating matzah, but it's not a positive that you did eat matzah, because factually you didn't eat matzah. And every day on the calendar, these are the boxes you were supposed to check off. You didn't check, and those boxes are checked off. So it comes out, you could have gaps, voids in your life. It's as if absentee, you weren't there. You didn't live those days. You meant to live, and living meant it's blank. None of the boxes are checked off. But I did tshuva. Tshuva means the negative box is not checked off, but the positive box is not checked off either. So knowing this in advance, what should a person's perspective be? Hillel's words. If I'm not for myself, who's going to be for me? And even when you do for yourself, what are you? The only one who could actually invest your life properly is yourself. And even when you do it properly, are you really checking off every box? And therefore, if not now, when else? You better get to it immediately. In Pirkei Avos it says also, that's Hillel. Hamlocha meruba. The work is enormous. Hapolim atzelim. The workers are lazy. Hal balabayis dochek. The employer is pushing them. There's a deadline. We've got to make the deadline. He wants to make the deadline before the deadline comes. After that, you can't be effective any longer. And that's what we have to see life. Life is all opportunity. Opportunity. Dan's deal, got a ticket, 80% off. That's a deal. That's opportunity. You can fly to who knows where, to Dubai today. Stay in a who knows what kind of hotel with an 89% discount. That's opportunity. You could go to Bermuda off season, literally for a fraction. You go when they're shooting the Scuds to Israel and stay in the King David for a tenth of the price. That's opportunity, right? That's not real opportunity. If it's mitzvah related, that's opportunity. It's not mitzvah related, and the cost factor is you're not going to do the mitzvah. That's not opportunity. That's called a loss. You've taken a very serious loss. Because again, what you missed, you can't make that up. Although there may not be a claim against you. So, Rodev Tzedakah v'Chesed Yibtzah Chaim, one who pursues continuously Tzedakah, Chesed, and Emes, you come upon life. Because at the end of your life, all days when they present themselves, they can present themselves as full days, fully invested in what we're meant to invest in, what we're meant to invest it in. So he asks, why does one have to study Torah every day? He cites a Sifri, it says, you should love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your assets. Then it says, you should take these words and put it on your heart. You should study Torah. So the Sifri says, how does one come to love God? Through the study of Torah. Most people don't even know who God is. What does God want from you? God wants I should be what I think I should be, a good person. How do you know what a good person is? Good person doesn't only mean a person doesn't hurt other people. Good person means you do what you're supposed to do. You may have fallen short, who knows to what degree you fell short. So how do you come to love God? The Torah is the spiritualization of the person. It gives you a capacity to appreciate who God is. Once you have that appreciation, we could talk about with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your possessions. You're willing to give it up. But you can only have a sense and a capacity to grasp who he is only if you engage in Torah study. Otherwise, you have no sense who he is. Give you an example. I've been teaching Baruch Hashem for many years. And I teach most of the people, many of them are very bright. They have top of the line of secular educations. And they've been in the workforce for many years, dealing up those advanced echelons of finance and different now. And we study, and I pose a question, and they're confounded by the question. Then I give them an answer. They have such a level of joy. So I ask them, anything in your lives that you've experienced, whether it's law school, when you graduate school, and finance, whatever it was, or anything, this level of feeling, have you ever experienced? When you're involved in Torah study and you're immersed and you're touched in a certain way. Most of them said they never had such an experience. They were never touched that way. You're touched differently. When you study Torah and you study it the way you're supposed to study it, not where, you're just groping in the dark. There's an analysis, there's a question, there's an answer, and everything fits. It's more than it makes sense. That is what it is. And you achieve a level of clarity. It's like you say, it's unbelievable. I get it now. That's what it is. But you can only get it now only if you engage with the process. The process is, how do you come to love God? With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your possessions. Take these words and put them on your heart. Study the Torah. If you study the Torah properly, then you come to love God at every level. Because you understand who he is, and therefore it's worthwhile to dedicate yourself to him. And that's why Shammai says, Ase Torah Keva. To be able to achieve that level of feeling and understanding, internalization, Torah has to be primary. It has to be primary. And I explained, primary doesn't mean you study 18 hours a day and you work 2 hours a day. It doesn't mean that. Primary means, what is the primary perspective in my life? I work, but why do I work? To be able to give my children a Jewish education, to be able to support Torah education, for others, to be able to give charity, to be able to have a certain type of home, which has a Jewish environment. So that is Torah Keva. Because all my involvement, even the material, it's connected to my Judaism. That's what it is. That's Aseh Torah Keva. Of course, you have to study. But even if you're not studying as much as you did as a student, it's still Keva. Because of my perspective, what's the value of all this? Is to have the mansion because I want to live in a mansion, or to have that quality material life because I want to create a Kiddush Hashem. And I want my children to feel not deprived, but in a responsible way. Not to spoil them, rotten, and to drown them in material. We're not talking about that. They have a perspective. That's Torah Keva. So if everything you do is related to God, before you put a morsel of food in your mouth, it's Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, the Master, the Almighty, the King of the universe. And you say that 100 times a day. before you even put food in your mouth, whether it's liquid, whether it's grain product, whether it's other types of food items, vegetable, fruit, the pre-bracha, the after bracha. You're always thankful. You make a statement. It's not me, it's him. I thank you for giving me. What do you mean? I have all this. I have unlimited credit expense account. I can order anything. Yeah, as long as God gives you the ability to order, you can order anything. But he cuts off the pipeline, you order nothing. But it's a perspective. But it's not, it's off the top of my head. It's a reality. And Jews live reality. Said something interesting. Based on the first chapter of Tehillim, David refers to Torah as Torah Hashem. It's God's Torah. You should study Torah Hashem. Then it says, and in your Torah, you'll meditate there continuously. So the Talmud asks a question. It starts off Torah's first as Torah Hashem. It's God's Torah. And after you study, it says, and your Torah you will study day and night. You reflect on it day and night. Is it God's or is it yours? So the Talmud tells us, before you study it, it's God's Torah. Once you study it, it's your Torah. It's yours. And therefore you have a right to waive your honor. Person's a Talmud Chochem. If he chooses to waive his honor, he has a right to waive his honor. Why? Because it's his Torah. It's his. You have a right to waive it. But what does that mean it's yours? Meaning, when you allow Torah to be integrated in your being, it becomes part and parcel of you. It becomes part of your system. Once it's your system, you sense it. It's not just cerebral knowledge. It's a spiritualization process. Whatever Torah you absorb becomes part of you. It's enmeshed in you. It's incorporated in you. Therefore, it's you. It becomes you. Therefore, you're impacted to that degree by it. But you can't, if a person never tasted a chocolate cake, lahavdil, and never tasted chocolate, so there's no frame of reference to indicate what a chocolate cake tastes like, unless you taste it, you don't know what it is. Person says, what's Torah? Unless you experience it, you don't know what it is. And you have to experience it in a proper context. Not you hear about it. It's some kind of archaic, whatever it may be. The wisest man who ever lived is Shlomo Melech, King Solomon. And when he refers to the Torah, he says, I've given you the ultimate commodity. Don't abandon it. This is God speaking. So who's the expert on what is and what's not? The wise man says, God himself, who's the creator, says there's no better commodity than Torah. Therefore, don't abandon it. It's the tree of life for those who embrace it. Who's talking to you? Somebody with a 30 IQ, a 50 IQ, some archaic Jew. We're talking about King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. It's a tree of life. Well, I believe that there are other trees of life. You can believe what you want, but you can't change reality. We're talking about specifically for a Jew. What is the tree of life? Life means not for the moment. Person lives for the moment, he's a fool. Life is more than a moment. Life is eternity. So if you want to have a piece of eternity, and not that your life should be invested in futility, it's a tree of life for those who embrace it, uphold it. That's what it is. Except because as you attach yourself, as we discussed, if you graft a branch onto a tree, what happens to that branch eventually? And the graft is done properly. The ecology of the tree, of the branch, assumes the ecology of the tree. If you graft yourself onto the Torah and attach yourself to the Torah, which is God's wisdom, and there's nothing holier than that, you assume a holy state because you're attached to the source of all holiness, which is the Torah itself. And that's what King Solomon is saying. It's a tree of life for the person who takes hold of it, embraces it. And that's why it's the lekach tov. It's the ultimate commodity. If you want to connect yourself to God, that's the way to do it. Therefore, don't abandon it. Because you abandon Torah, you abandon God. That's what you're doing. You're cutting yourself off from God. Yesterday, I was at a siyum. My son has been learning with a certain person. He's a Russian. He's born in the United States. His parents are Russians. Only child. And he graduated Cooper Union 5 years ago. He's 25 years old and as smart as they come. Very humble. And he's so brilliant, they asked him to come back to teach at Cooper Union. This person, he taught himself how to read Hebrew, and he reads fluently. You wouldn't know that he wasn't observant. He's not observant, doesn't wear tefillin, doesn't keep Shabbos. Dietary laws is question what he does. So my son finished a tractate with him yesterday. So we had to see him. We had a meal, was here done in Brooklyn, and he spoke. The way he spoke, it was literally a Kiddush Hashem. What he said, what Torah is to him, how it opened his mind, how he sees things differently today because of his exposure to Torah. It's a whole different reality. This kid makes a lot of money. He's a software developer, works for some Coinbit company, not for this guy Fried. Whatever, he has two names, Fried something. Okay, it's irrelevant. And he spoke about what it is. But again, if he would have partaken of it 5 years ago and it's been a process, nobody even knows what it is. Nobody knows what it is. You go into the ocean with a wetsuit, water doesn't touch your body. The only way a Jew's soul can be touched, you have to engage. If you want to benefit from food, you have to ingest it. You have to eat it. Otherwise, your system can't process it. You could look at the food all day long, and you could touch the books, but you understand, you're not being nourished by it. There's no infusion of nourishment or anything. The Torah, to be impactful on a Jew, you have to partake of it. You have to study it. You have to articulate it. You have to reflect on it. That's when it makes a difference. Otherwise, you're in an environment. More than that, it has very little effect. It may give you an interest, but effect, you have to actually imbibe it. You have to ingest it. And that's dialogue, reflection. That's how it happens. Rodef Chesed ve'ebes yimtzochayim. One who pursues ongoing, not you've done Chesed, not you've studied Torah. It's ongoing. Rodef. You're pursuing continuously. Tzedakah, Chesed, and truth. That person will find life. No, there's an expression, no coincidences in life. No coincidences in life. Talmud tells a story. There were 3 Gentiles. They wanted to convert to Judaism. And they first go to Shammai, who was a contemporary, a colleague of Hillel. They'd studied together under the great Torah sages Shammai V'Avtalio when they were in Babylon. And eventually he came to Israel, Hillel, Shammai. And each one came to convert with a precondition. Hillel and Shammai's personality were different personalities. Shammai had little tolerance for nonsense. So one Gentile comes to Shammai, says, I'd like to convert. He says, okay. What do you know? He says, but I'll only convert the one condition. If I can be the high priest. If I don't can't be the high priest, I'm not converting. He says, something. You don't want to convert? Don't convert. Just don't waste my time. And he dismissed him. Another person comes to Shammai and he says, I'll convert on one condition. If you teach me one principle which encompasses the whole Torah. If not, I'm not interested. He says, you're not interested? As they say, goodbye, Charlie. Have a good day. Don't waste my time. And the third one came with another prerequisite. Also, Shammai dismisses him. Hillel now, they come to Hillel. And he's the one who says, I only convert if I'm the high priest. The high priest goes in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Only he can officiate at Yom Kippur. Okay? So he says to this Gentile, could you just hold it one moment? Sorry. He says to the Gentile, do you realize King David, who's one of the most special Jews that ever lived, if he would officiate on Yom Kippur and go to the Holy of Holies, do you realize he's liable for spiritual excision? He's not permitted. So if King David can't be the high priest, you mean you want to be the high priest? He said, I didn't realize that. If that's the case, I'm backing down. That's no longer going to be a precondition. And he studied, he converted to be a Jew. The other one says, teach me one principle. Then it comes to the Torah. He says, what you despise for yourself, don't do to your fellow. Meaning, love your fellow as you love yourself. He says, that's great. He says, the rest is all commentary. So these three converts, they meet eventually, and they say, if we would have been discouraged by Shammai, where we'd be today? We'd be nowhere. Thank God we met Hillel, and today we're all Jews. And he brought us under the wings of the divine presence. You got it? There are no coincidences in life. If a person is exposed to a certain perspective and he's touched by that perspective, the reason why you're touched and other people are not touched, because God wants you to be touched. And if you were touched and you have an inkling of what it is, and it's something unique and special, what a person has to do is continue pursuing it. Just say, I had enough, I'm leaving. I know what it is. And if you say, you know what it is, and you choose to leave it, you're creating a problem for yourself. Person doesn't know any better. As they say, ignorance is bliss. But if you already have an inkling what it is, so ignorance is not bliss any longer. If you had this and you could have more, why did you turn your back on it? So that's what they said. Thank God we met Hillel, and Hillel gave us an understanding of what it is. And it's not the way we understand it. Therefore, today, we're committed Jews for that reason. Rodef tzedakah. Rodef tzedakah v'chesed yibtzor chaim. You have to pursue it. It's not enough to do it once in a while. Rabbi, it wasn't if I come to your lecture every Saturday and, and I'm just came back from the Kiddush Club. I'm half intoxicated. Why can't I listen to your sermon at the end of the services? Why is that enough? Firstly, you shouldn't go to the Kiddush Club, because maybe if you pray a full service, then you'd hear the sermon, it would resonate to another level. Okay? But everybody has his way of doing it. It's not enough to come to the rabbi and hear him speak half an hour a week. A Jew has an obligation to be exposed, have a continuous infusion of that. Because just as the Shabbos is a certain day and has its value, every day of the week has a day, God endows you with that life, which is made of time, to invest it, that you should be the beneficiary. Beneficiary means forever it's yours. That means it has to be within the spiritual realm. But again, life is choice. You make the choice, the right choice, you're the beneficiary. You don't, nobody's forcing you to do anything other than that. But who ultimately is going to be the victim? The person is victimizing himself by leaving himself out in the cold, not having entry into where he should be going.